Want to build a thriving business while making a much bigger impact in the world by becoming known as an influential voice in your industry? The choice versus just a choice with your ideal client? That's exactly what you're going to learn as I interview business experts, industry thought leaders, and entrepreneurs who are in the trenches making their mark so you can too. This is the award-winning podcast, The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, and I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. And welcome to another episode. So my guest today says the best bet you can ever make is the one you make on yourself. And joining me on today's show is Richard Parker. Richard's course, How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price. Well, that program has sold over 100,000 copies. He was hired by Ray Dalio to teach one of his sons the art of buying small businesses. He's published 200 articles and has appeared in Forbes, New York Times, The Street, Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. And on today's show, he's going to share the 3 biggest mistakes prospective businesses who are buying what they make, those mistakes. He's going to talk about why now may be the best time in the last 30 years to buy a business, as well as discover how to be among the 10% who successfully buy a business. So welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Lots to dive into today. So with the last point you're going to cover, we're talking about how to be amongst the 10% who successfully buy a business. So I'm assuming that there are about 90% of other people who do go to buy a business who unfortunately are probably making some of the mistakes that you're going to talk about today. Yes?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And it's unfortunate because the statistics are abysmal, right? I mean, at 90% failure rate, and some have it pegged slightly higher, typically around 94%, is really unbearable when you think about it in anything. I mean, to have that rate of failure, when in reality, it's completely avoidable.
And when you're talking about buying a business, I mean, speak a little bit about, to give context, because some people may be thinking about buying into a franchise. Some might be building or buying a business that has already been built up. So with the statistics, is this across the board with franchises and standalone businesses?
So it's a great question because I focus on existing businesses, but they could be existing franchises. So people who acquire a new franchise, in other words, they build a new location or they're opening up a new location, they're carved out of that data. But
Yes.
anyone who's buying, there's a huge market of franchise resales of what they're called, which is the sales of existing franchise locations. And those are lumped into the existing non-franchise businesses that are sold. So those statistics aggregate those two. They're both
Yes.
they're both part of the same.
Yeah, I have another follow-up question to this as well. And I'd imagine that the people that you deal with are probably not business owners already. So it's not an existing business who is actually buying maybe a business competitor or so forth, or is this the mistakes that you see commonly made for both those people? So not just new business owners who are looking to buy into a business, but perhaps existing businesses who are buying into a business to expand their business. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it's a great question because a lot of what we focus on, and I had an interview earlier today was asking a similar question related to how people can potentially expand their business by buying or acquiring other businesses, which can be done at the lower market as well. So yes, this includes the market of any individual that is looking to acquire a business, be it a franchise resale or a non-franchise business, or as it relates to individuals that are current business owners that are looking to expand their business through acquisition. Well, the reality is they know their business, right? There's no disputing that. They know their business, they know their market, they know their customers, they know what they go to do, what they get up every day to do. So they're well versed in that, but they know, generally speaking, they have absolutely no clue related to the acquisition of another business. Unless they've done it before several times. I'm doing this for 30 years. I've acquired 13 business and 1 co-investment. I still learn something new in every deal. So, you're always evolving to become, to increase your knowledge base.
Yes. And it's wonderful that we're able to tap into your expertise because, as we know through the introduction, you've been involved in this and you're learning and evolving all of the time with each new experience. So let's talk about what are the 3 biggest mistakes that you see prospective business buyers make. We need to avoid these.
Okay, so the first thing is, which seems pretty logical for someone who's not in the mix of looking to acquire a business, is individuals typically jump in. They have no experience, so most people have never bought a business before. So they jump into this process. They have no experience, no knowledge, no expertise, no preparation. They haven't established any criteria for the type of business that they're going to want to buy, and the internet, which in some ways is a blessing for this industry, is also a horrible curse, because you have this, this uh, in, incredible amount of information. Most of it is generic, a lot of it is useless, and then you have these publicly listed business for sale websites where the majority of those businesses never sell, and those businesses are typically posted by business brokers. 75% of those businesses never sell, which is crazy. So what happens is people jump into this process and immediately start flailing around the internet looking for information. They generally get their hands on generic or useless information. Some of it may be valuable, but in the aggregate, it's really poor. And they're looking at businesses, so they're contacting sellers, they're contacting brokers. They have no idea what questions to ask. They have no idea, when financial information is presented to them, what to make of it. And so what happens is they go through that with that lack of knowledge. They try to squeeze their way through the process, right? And
Hmm.
they end up encountering one situation after another where they come across questions that they're not sure how to answer. These are life-changing decisions. And so they go through all of these stages without making any real progress. Very often people just spend countless hours searching the internet, looking for businesses, trying to figure out which, if any, may be right for them. And that's a horrible way to go. It's like going into a starting in a race, the starting gate, and the gun goes off and everybody runs in 12 different directions. You have to know what the finish line looks like. And that really leads to the second point, which is the right business. So people are typically searching endless business for sale listings. They have no clue what business is right for them, hoping they're figuring out what it's going to be along the way. And it's really what we call here in America, I know in Melbourne, Australia, we call it ass backwards, right? The first thing that you're supposed to do is you've got to get a handle on the type of business that's right for you. And then it's quite easy to find and buy it. So that's point number two. The first one being lack of knowledge, experience, expertise, etc. Second one being honing in on what business is right for you. And the third thing is understanding that there's no such thing as a perfect business. Every business, existing business, a startup is a perfect business because you don't have there's nothing wrong yet, but there's nothing good yet, right? So you
Yes.
haven't done anything. Everything is blue sky. Everything sounds fantastic, but it generally doesn't work out that way. But when you're looking for an existing business or franchise, every existing business, it has warts, it has pimples, it has blemishes. There's no such thing as perfection. And for someone to get into the mindset of being an entrepreneur, you have to understand these imperfections. You have to mitigate potentially difficult ones. So ones that could cause problems down the road, those you mitigate for, or if they're too problematic, you walk away from. But you as you go through this process, you have to understand that people tend to treat incidents as catastrophes. And oftentimes it's an uncertainty. They haven't done anything overtly entrepreneurial at this point in their lives. So, I mean, I get it, but getting the mindset of, I'm going to buy a business, it may not be perfect, but you're going to solve for all potential issues related to the pricing, the terms, the conditions, your due diligence. But the goal is you want to get your hands on a good, solid, stable business, because if you do it right, both theoretically and practically speaking, you can get the keys on a Monday and you take a paycheck on Friday.
Mm.
So understand. So those are the three. Again, first being lack of knowledge, second being honing in on what business is right for you, and the third understanding that nothing is perfect. You just have to get it as
Yes.
close to that as you can.
Yeah. And I would imagine, Richard, that within each of those different mistakes that you see, there could be a lot of different components that people need to be aware of. It's one of those things, people don't know what they don't know, and you can't base decisions that could be life changing. And of course, buying a business that ends up being a business that drains you from your energy, ends up increasing your stress and financial stress as well, is certainly something that we'd want to avoid. Out of all of those three, and would you say that one is the most common, and if they tend to, I have a saying that individually each of these things are so important, but collectively they are crucial. So do you find that a good place to start, and I know we're going to talk about, discover how to be amongst the 10%, what would you say is a complete red flag for anybody who is already in the process of starting to find a business, and they've listened to what you've just said, Richard, and I've kind of got that covered. What is a red flag that you often will see people, if you really don't get this right, the whole lot of what I've just spoken about ends up being a problem
Okay,
because you
so
haven't foreseen? Does that make sense?
it makes sense. There's a few questions in there, but let me hone into one that I believe, based on my experience, is the most important one, which is
Yes.
point number 2 that I made. There's 23 stages in this process of buying a business, from thinking about it to getting organized, to getting people on board, to engaging potential business brokers, to starting the search and the timing. So going through that whole process, anybody could do this if you break it down into manageable, bite-sized pieces. Now, you don't want to make any big mistakes, of course, but to give you some context and maybe reduce this to the absurd, if you will, right?
Mm,
If you were to do an average job on everything, even make a couple of mistakes, no big ones, no, ones that are going to put you out of business quickly. But if you do an average business, an average job on all of the steps in the process, but you get the right business for you right, that piece, you're 50% there.
yeah.
Because there's nothing singularly, which was your initial question, singularly, there's nothing more important than that. And,
Yeah.
you know, the way I try to explain it to people is in a couple of ways. One is, if you're going to look for, trying to get a job, it's okay to embellish your skills a little bit during the interview process, because your goal is to get the job and you want to get your foot in the door, and you understand that there's people and colleagues that are going to help you find your way, and sort of some of your weaknesses or shortfalls. And it's absolutely true what you said. People don't know what they don't know, and that's always dangerous. But when you're buying a business, that's on your money, right? It's your money at stake in your future. So what's important for people to figure out is the following. Everybody has what I like to call one magical skill. It could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be dealing with, putting a plan together, dealing with employees, logistics, whatever it may be. So that single skill set is the following. Whatever it is that you do best has to be the single most important driving factor of the revenues and profits of any business you consider purchasing, because you can hire and outsource for everything else. But there's always a single thing that is the gold in a business that drives the business. And whatever skill set it takes for that driver to happen, that is what you've got to have.
Yeah, totally. As you said that, I totally agree with that, because it's also going to create that fulfillment, that passion, and you would know that for being a business owner yourself, something that you continue to create and evolve. And even though you may be purchasing an existing business, there still is that requirement of you continuing to maintain the momentum that has already been built. And if you're not excited about that, if that doesn't get you up in the morning, it's going to be very difficult for you to overcome challenges. And there's challenges in everything, isn't it? And there's risks in all those things. But you'll find yourself becoming very downcast soon if you find that you don't like even showing up within your
Correct.
business. I
Correct.
totally
Correct. And one of the things that you point out related to passion, where I think people have this misconception of, find something you love, this whole, you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, or find something you're passionate about and go into that business. That sounds terrific, but it's not the reality of things, right?
right.
And so what happens is, when you get into a business, and of course, you've got to be proud of the business that you acquire and what it does and the products and services that it offers. But the passion develops. It's rare that you start off at a high level of passion. The passion develops because you've got into a business. You've changed your life. You don't have to work for somebody anymore. You're in control of your own destiny. There's no ceiling to your earnings. You're contributing to the life of others. You're getting up every morning to build something, to grow something that over time is going to add substantial value. And then come at one point down the road, you're going to sell it for infinitely more than you paid for it. So everything that happens in a business, because it's like a living, breathing animal, right? A business,
Yes.
things change, and there's ups and there's downs, and there's great times and there's horrible times. And I've had businesses that have, been absolute phenomenal successes, while at some point in time during that business, I went to sleep on Monday night. I had no clue how I was going to make payroll on Friday. And so you have these emotional roller coaster parts, but all of that contributes to developing excitement about the business, and you get up every morning with a purpose and excited, and running into the office. So the passion really develops over time.
That's right.
It's
It's
rare
a
that it happens from the
motivation that you
beginning.
will continue to take whatever steps that are necessary. And talking about, you mentioned earlier about looking to see whether a business fit you. If you're someone who's very maybe entrepreneurial, you've got to then look at, if I go into a franchise, what are the regulations around what you've got, an opportunity to change. There's going to be some rules and regulations that they don't want you to go off, left field, because of the fact that it's under their franchise. So these are just things that you need to consider, I
Yes.
think. And the reason I mention that is because you hear of individuals that go into roles that they just can't thrive within, because the environment in which they're working isn't conducive to their style, their motivation, what drives them, their key skill and strength, as you said. And similarly to a business, are you buying a business that has, structures around it, say is in a franchise, that is quite restricted or feels constricting to you, and you can't make the changes that you may want to change because of what's in place. And these are just things that you need to consider. And as we've said, we are just scratching the surface. Let's just move on to the next, because you say that now may just be the best time, even in the last 30 years, to buy a business. Share more about this.
Okay, it's a period that I call beautiful upheaval. I mean, there's just some wonderful things at play that put the advantage in my view in the buyer's court. And there isn't blood in the streets, but it's starting to seep in. And when that happens, it's generally opportunistic for acquirers. And some of the things, for example, interest rates are going up, inflation. There's concern presently about inflation, and whether someone listens to this today or 10 years from now, when the economy is in flux, right? These things all play into whether or not it's somewhat of a buyer's market or seller's market. So you have those three things specifically at play. And what happens is many buyers are scared, or prospective buyers are scared. That equals less buyers. Typically, that equals a buyer's market. In other words, you have a business for sale, the buyer pool that you can potentially sell your business to, if that's shrinking, so
That's
so
competition.
your valuation typically shrinks commensurately, right? And furthermore, valuations have been made very difficult over the last few years because of the pandemic. And so you had some companies that just completely went out of business. You had consumer products businesses that did unbelievable, and they've dropped typically 20 to 30% after. Then you had subsequent years to the pandemic where you don't know what was a good measure of the business. In other words, you had one business, a year was up or a year was terribly down, then the next year wasn't an indication. Was it closer related to 2 years before the pandemic, or is it more, is this the new normal related to the business, the level of revenues and the level of profits? So what that leads to, if you're a buyer looking to buy a business, you have all this uncertainty within the business itself, and it's quantifiable. It's not like your own perception that the business is in flux. These are the numbers that are dictating that. The numbers don't lie, people lie. So if the numbers indicate that, like a bit of a roller coaster scenario, what happens is it causes an astute buyer to say, hey, the only way I'm going to do this is on a performance-based deal. So I need to know what the business is going to look like. It's great. It's okay to pay. You look at the historical financials of a business, so you consider the past, and of course the present, but you buy it for the future. If you have no insight to what that future is going to look like based on the past, because the past should be somewhat representative of the future. But if it's up and down and all over the place, then it's hard to peg a valuation. So you have to attach a performance piece to the valuation. That's advantageous to a buyer. And the other piece is, as interest rates go up, leverage forces more seller notes. In America, it's very prevalent. Seller financing. 91% of our clients have a component of seller financing to all of their deals. And right now, it really is the bridge in many cases of the only way to get a job to the finish line. There are some government programs with financing, which are good, but if the business and the individual doesn't qualify, seller financing is not only normal in these transactions. Now it's prevalent. There's no escaping it, because that's the only way the seller is going to get to a closed deal. So I think all these things in combined really make it's again, I call it beautiful upheaval, because it's so advantageous to the buyer. All these things for people who have the strength and fortitude of character to be able to march on through some difficult times are going to uncover some unbelievable opportunities.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next point about, what are some of the things that we need to do so that we can be among the 10% who successfully buy a business? And you mentioned a couple of times, and of course yourself as who's going to be one of those resources, business brokers. We know in other industries, there are often some things that we need to be aware of as red flags. And I would imagine that even in the industry of business brokers, we need to be armed, if you will, if I can use that word, armed, so that we can recognize, is the person to whom I'm speaking to and the questions that I am asking, is this going to help me to determine whether this is someone that I want to represent me, to go out and find a potential business, or someone that I can then use as expertise. What are some things, Richard, that we need to look out for if we are going down the line of, I want to look at opportunities for businesses that I can buy, but I want someone on my team? What do we need to look out for, and what are some red flags?
So the first thing that people need to consider is, understand business brokers. And I do a lot of investment banking, so higher level business brokerage. So anything that I'm saying in a negative way, I'm in the industry. So it's just a recognition of the facts. Individuals need to understand that business broker, unless you're paying a business broker, they don't represent you. They're not going to dispense unbiased advice. Their goal, and understandably so, is to sell you a business. Their goal and their job is not to sell you the right business. Some have, are more sincere and are more concerned about that. But by and large, their goal is to get you into a business and have a completed deal, because that's how they put food on their table. And unless you're paying them, that's the same for the most part in any commissioned industry. I believe in using a business broker. Unless you're paying them, understand what their role is, right?
Yeah.
And very often in these transactions, you're going to be dealing with this seller's broker. Now, you may have come across the listing through a broker in regions where business brokers cooperate on transactions. So there's three real areas where a broker can help you. They can help you gain access to business that are listed for sale, either within their own brokerage firm or other ones that they may be aware of, or listings of colleagues. They can deliver bad news to the seller. And, you're going to be buying a business. You're going to need that seller almost in all cases for a transition period to help you learn the business. And so if there's bad news to be delivered to the seller, let the broker do it, because you need to have a relationship with them, not only during the discussions of the acquisition, but post-acquisition. So let them be delivered the bad news. And the third thing is, they've done this before. Right? They know how the documentation that's involved, what if it's, whether it's a lease assignment or some an environmental issue that needs to be investigated, contracts. They've done this before. This is what they do every day. So they understand how deals get done. So, yes, you want to, if it makes sense to use a business broker, great. But keep in mind, that's not your unbiased advisor. Right? You're far better off to get a mentor who's done this before. The easiest way, the oldest proven method and formula for success when you're trying something new in your life is to just find someone who's proven successful at it and copy them. And even better if you can get them as a mentor. So that's not the role of a business broker.
Great advice. And of course, we'll give you an opportunity, Richard, to share how people can reach out to you, because I'm assuming that that's the support that you can offer as well, and you've got resources available too. Okay, so how can we be amongst the 10% who successfully buy a business? What do we need to do?
So the first thing, I think, you go back and you look at what is the polar opposite of the mistakes, the biggest mistakes people make, right? Of the three biggest mistakes. So the first thing is you've got to acquire the knowledge. Now you don't, you want to get up as quick as fast as possible to a level of expertise, right? And again, when I talk about a level of expertise, I want people to understand anybody can do this, right? This is a um, it's not difficult, it's complicated. And so understanding the various components of the process is critically important. Acquiring the knowledge that they need for the various stages of how you're valuing a business, what you need to do during due diligence, what you need to negotiate. There's 36 key questions you need to ask the sellers. What are those? What questions should you be asking? What answers should you be looking for? And if in the case that there's an answer back, what is the response to that? Because typically questions beget more questions, right? So people get into this process, they have, way too many questions that go unanswered. That's why they abort, right? Because they just become overwhelmed. So the first thing is you have to gain knowledge. You have to learn what's involved related to getting in your own head and being very clear what type of business is right for you. Like, I know I have 5 golden rules for buying a business. I'm happy to share that with you afterwards, which are unbreakable, and these evolved over time. Like, I will never buy a business if it has 4. It's got to have all 5. And people need to formulate their own golden rules of what they want in a business. A lot of that is personal. Some of it could be financial. So the understanding, the knowledge, getting the knowledge and expertise to deal with all the various steps in the process is paramount. I mean, there's no getting away from that. And it doesn't matter where you get it, if it's from an individual, if it's from a course or what have you, you have to get the information. The other thing is you can't fall for these sort of guru type programs. I tell people to be very wary. There's all kinds of, in every industry, there's these alleged gurus on the internet selling programs for thousands of dollars. And most of them are just gurus in marketing, right? They've never even done what they've done before. And so people should be very cautious before they drop $5, $10, $25,000 on these type of programs. The other thing is getting in tune with the financials. So there's a number that says the majority of businesses or small business transactions will fail during the due diligence stage. And that usually comes after a contract is in place. So getting comfortable with the financials and learning how to read a financial statement and understanding that is important. But the beauty is you can hire an accountant to help you do that. And then it's walking through the various stages in the process in a methodical manner and being able to yell help. Like, if you can't do this whole thing in 6 months, something's drastically wrong, right? From the beginning, if 4 months, it takes 4 months to find a business, a month to negotiate, a month to do diligence. So you should be able to do it in 6 months. So the 10% who succeed are either two groups. They're the groups who've done it before numerous times, and they have a track record. They know, what type of business is right for them. They know how to negotiate. They know how to value a business. They know what to look for in due diligence. They know how to structure a contract. They know, so they have a track record. They have an advantage. The other group that succeeds are the ones that gain the knowledge that they need in order to become experts, right?
Yes.
So and I know, I understand that if it's somewhat of a generic statement, but there's no excuse for the knowledge and preparation. So people that want to get into, and I'll give you an example. If you're not sure what type of business is right for you, well, go onto the publicly listed businesses for sale, pick 3 or 4 categories that you think you're interested in.
Yeah.
Line up 4 or 5 sellers within each. Suddenly you have a sample size of 20 business owners that have their businesses for sale that you can go and meet. You can ask them the questions. I'll help them get the questions, of course, but you can ask them the questions. And after each meeting, you could determine, do I like this business? Right? Do I like this individual? Do I trust them? Can I see myself running this business? And if the answer is no, then you look at several others. It may be a case if you have to rinse and repeat and say, oh, those 4 categories are not for me. And very often people think they want to turn a hobby into a business, which in very rare cases succeed. Right? And so, going through these various steps and in a methodical way is how you navigate your way down the road. It's step by step.
Yes. Yes. Important. So important.
Yeah, and one of the other things that you touched upon was related to franchises, which you brought up a great point. For the most part, franchises are not for entrepreneurs. They're for people that want to own a business. The reason
Mm,
why a franchise is successful is because you follow the processes and procedures that have worked mostly well in other locations. It's
mm,
not for pioneers. And everything is about the brand. You have to put the brand first. And
yeah.
so if you're someone who's, a pioneer, an entrepreneur looking to do great things, and you come across a marketing strategy that doesn't seem to work and you want to change it and you want to do something different, that's not what a franchise is built for. And
Mm.
so, it's following the rules,
Yeah.
right?
If you're
It's like
someone that doesn't like following rules, or you see a rule and you think we can improve on that,
not for
rules are meant
you.
to be broken. If there's a
No,
better
actually, that's what everyone says. But the actual truth is rules are meant to be obeyed, right? And
way,
so if you, that was the
I'm
point.
the opposite.
That's the
That
point of the
someone
rule,
says
right? So that's why
something,
don't buy a franchise.
yeah,
Do
that's
yourself
right.
a franchise. Do yourself a
Stay
franchise. Do
away.
yourself a favor. Don't buy a franchise
But and you'll give that advice for free.
for free.
That's
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
love this. As I said, we have only just scratched the surface in this conversation, but I hope that for those people who have listened today, who have been considering or are in the process, I'm sure just from listening to your advice, it gives them an understanding then that there really is a framework to follow and to really make sure that they do their due diligence, they do the research in the right areas, have a good support team around you. And that's not only the legal and so forth, but a mentor who has done it before and has possibly helped others to do that before as well. Because as you've pointed out, a business broker, some of those people don't have your best interests at heart,
No,
but
they
rather,
certainly
as you
don't.
said, their remuneration is when the deal is done. So what are they going to be seeking to make sure the outcome is done? And again,
Yes.
that may not be the best business for you, and a mentor and someone who's able to support you is going to be able to point that out. So, Richard, how do people get in touch with you, and perhaps a bit of a snapshot on how you can support them?
Okay, the first thing I want to tell people is, just remind them that if they have any interest or inkling to get into business on their own, they owe it to themselves to at least investigate what's involved and to go down the road a little bit to learn and see, hey, for some it will be for them, for others it won't, but you owe it to yourself if you have this, just an ounce of inclination to be an entrepreneur or be in your own business. You really should go down the path because again, this is doable. I mean, anybody can do this. Not everybody will, but it's doable by anyone because we're not talking about sending men to the moon here. From my perspective, I never went into the the business or the program that we've sold 100,000 copies of. I never went into this as a business. I'm still stunned that we've sold the amount that we've sold over the years. I did it just to put all my years of experience to memorialize it, to hopefully, the night before we launched this product, my wife who's from your hometown said, how many do you think you're going to sell? And I said, my only goal is to help one person either buy the right business or avoid buying the wrong one. So when I'm trying to dispense advice to people, I hope it comes across in a sincere manner. It makes no difference to my lifestyle whatsoever if I never sell another program. But if people go to richardparker.com, there's 200 plus articles related to buying a business. They're all free. They're all on the website. People can go through there. You can get a very good understanding. Every step in the process of buying a business is laid out in like a head category. And within that, anywhere from 5 to 25 articles in each category. So they can really learn about a lot about it. If anybody has a question, if they go to the contact us page, again, on richardparker.com, just mention in your message to ask them to please forward the message to me, because if not, a support person will respond to it. But if you ask them to send it to me, and I'm happy to address any questions or get on the phone with anybody at any time. The big part of what we do, the 90% figure that I told you, 82% of our clients buy a business within 6 months. So we've really turned the industry upside down for many, many years because what we do works. And I help, I'm on the phone outside of doing these wonderful interviews with people such as yourself. I spend most of my days on the phone or on email helping our clients, and I never charge them for it. I just want to see them buy the right business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just the fact that, you've given so much rich resources on the website, as well as a great place for people to start, really validates, your heart in wanting to support people. And I think that's often the way that really good businesses are built on the back of, isn't it? Of being integral and sharing what you've learned, because you can certainly fast track to success, and also fast track to success through supporting people and avoiding the pit holes that they may not even be aware that are there. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you were saying earlier before we went live, this is your third interview. So you've certainly been sprinkling your wisdom around the place today, and we thank you for coming on the show and doing likewise with our audience as well. And we wish you all the best, Richard, and anybody who is looking to buy a business. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Do your research. Richard's website is certainly a go-to resource as you're expanding your knowledge in this area. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, great, insightful questions, and I really enjoyed our time together. Thank you again for having me. It's been an honor.
My pleasure. All the best.
Thank you. The same.
Hey, it's Anne-Marie. Before I go, are you a coach or a consultant who feels like the world's best kept secret? Your experience is vast, yet secretly you're frustrated because despite all of your hard work, you're just not getting the visibility, the recognition, or new clients you'd hope for, and you don't know why? I've created a free resource that'll help you build visibility, generate leads, and enroll dream clients with ease, because you're seen as a trusted authority, even in a crowded marketplace, and you've positioned yourself as the choice versus just a choice for your dream client. To get started, go to annemariecross.com/gift. That's annemariecross.com/gift.